Two oil tankers carrying Saudi crude to Asia have turned around in the Red Sea. On a shipping map, that may look like a minor change, but it could be an early warning of a much bigger disruption to global energy supplies. The Rhodos and Shinlong Yang were carrying a combined 2.8 million barrels of crude from Saudi Arabia's western port of Yanbu. Both initially sailed towards the Bab el-Mandeb Strait before reversing course, according to shipping analytics firm Kepler. Their change in direction followed the Houthis' announcement of a blockade of Saudi ports. It puts pressure on two of the world's most important energy choke points at the same time, the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb. Could this turn into a global oil shock?
The issue here is that the Houthis have already warned the Saudis. So it is not still very clear that to what extent Houthis would go ahead with their warning. But there is caution all around, and people are now scared of using Bab el-Mandeb for sending out the vehicles from the vessels from there. And mind it, these are very huge vehicles. They are known as VLCCs, very large crude containers, and they are very heavy. So in case these vessels could not pass through Bab el-Mandeb, and there is a possibility to what extent Houthis will go and really this warning would materialize. No one knows at this stage. The shipping companies are basically taking a precautionary route. Some of the containers are returning back. These two vessels have returned back. So it's still wait and see, but there is a scare in the market, and much would depend upon that. In case the Saudis continue to use this route, what would be the real reaction of the Houthis? Would they go and attack these vessels, or it's just a warning and they may not go to the full extent? There are question marks, but because from the Houthi side as well, that in case they literally go after go as per their warning, then the war theater is going to expand much bigger. The US reaction, the reaction of the Saudi shipment from of the shipping companies, the reaction of the Saudi armed forces, and instinctively the reaction of the Pakistani forces who are now based in Saudi Arabia. All these things would come into the picture. So that means that the Saudis and much would depend on these things, and Houthis perhaps may not be very sure at this moment that to what extent they should go ahead for this warning. But people are scared and people are taking precautionary measures, and that's the reason that these two vessels were called back and they had to turn around.
To understand the risk, we first need to look at the geography. The Strait of Hormuz connects Gulf oil and gas producers with international markets. Before the war, roughly 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies passed through it. But traffic through Hormuz has fallen sharply amid the US-Iran conflict. Iran has restricted passage, while the United States is blocking vessels traveling to and from Iranian ports and coastal areas. Kepler recorded only 3 commodity vessels crossing the strait on Tuesday. No very large crude carriers or liquefied natural gas tankers were seen making the journey. The disruption does not affect every Gulf exporter in the same way. Iraq, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain depend almost entirely on Hormuz for energy exports. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates also rely heavily on it. But both have pipelines leading to ports outside the strait. For Saudi Arabia, the main alternative is Yanbu on the Red Sea. As traffic through Hormuz declined, Riyadh moved more oil across the country by pipeline and exported it through Yanbu. The port shipped about 4.1 million barrels per day in June, rerouting roughly 64% of the Saudi crude that would otherwise have passed through Hormuz, according to Kepler. But Saudi oil leaving Yanbu for Asia must travel south through Bab el-Mandeb, the narrow passage between Yemen and the Horn of Africa. Now that route is also under pressure.
Let's get into some mathematics at this stage. Before the war, or before Feb 28 this year, 2026, Saudis were exporting 70-80% of their oil through Strait of Hormuz. This oil pipeline, I think they were using it for shipment of, let's say, 1 million barrels a day. Now, To a very great extent of this was even for the domestic consumption of Saudi refineries based in Yambo and in the western coast of Saudi Arabia. So that means that very less of it was going for loading on vessels from Yambu port and going through Bab al-Mandeb. Now, post Feb 28, when the Strait of Hormuz was closed and fighting erupted out there, Saudis began using Yambu port and Bab al-Mandeb for shipping through to their markets, especially in Asia. Now, the maximum that this pipeline could have shipped is roughly 7 million barrels a day. And almost a month after the beginning of the war, Saudi Aramco chief announced that they are shipping 7 million barrels a day from this pipeline, the east-west pipeline of Saudi Arabia, carrying vessels from their the oil wells and oil fields on the east coast of Saudi Arabia to the west coast of Saudi Arabia. So it went up to 7 million barrels a day. Now, out of that 7 million barrels a day, some 2 million barrels a day were for the domestic Saudi consumption, and the rest 5 were for export, and these were loaded onto vessels from Yambu port, and then they were going in. But at this moment, they cannot expand it any further because it has reached its maximum 7 million barrels a day. So the export is just 5 million barrels a day. They cannot use this pipeline for any further exports at this moment. And this 5 million barrels a day is less than what they were exporting before Feb 28. So not 100% oil is going through this, or not 100% of Saudi exports are going through at this moment. They have been trying to use Strait of Hormuz. When the hostilities stopped after the MOU, they started to load from Ras Tanura on the east coast port and started using Strait of Hormuz. Now that it has stopped, they are not in a position to export 100% of their capacity at this moment, or 100% of what is the requirement of the market, especially in Asia, which was the real market for Saudis and perhaps the rest of the Gulf Arab producers.
The Houthis announced what they described as a naval blockade of Saudi Arabia after threatening to impose a siege on the kingdom.
تعلن القوات المسلحة اليمنية حظر الملاحة البحرية على العدو السعودي المجرم وفق معادلة الحصار بالحصار، وسيدخل حيز التنفيذ من لحظة إعلان هذا البيان.
Kepler says 12 tankers carrying crude from Yanbu remain in the Red Sea. 2 others switched off their tracking transponders near Bab al-Mandeb, while some empty tankers heading towards Yanbu also appear to hesitate. Between 2023 and 2025, the Houthis attacked commercial vessels in the Red Sea using missiles, drones, and small boats. 4 ships were sunk and 9 seafarers were killed, while traffic through Bab al-Mandeb fell to a record low. There are also concerns about Saudi energy facilities along the Red Sea coast. The region has almost 1.9 million barrels per day of refining capacity and supplies significant volumes of diesel to Europe. Asia would be the most directly exposed. About 6 million barrels of crude travel through Bab al-Mandeb towards Asian markets each day, according to Kepler. Saudi Arabia supplies roughly 2/3 of that volume, while much of the remainder is Russian crude traveling through the Red Sea. India is particularly vulnerable. More than half of its crude imports currently pass through Bab al-Mandeb, while nearly half of its Gulf oil imports depend on Hormuz. Pakistan is also exposed, with about 36% of its crude imports passing through Bab al-Mandeb. China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines rely on the route to varying degrees.
Because virtually all the importers, it's not just Pakistan, all the importers are facing the issue prices are going up all around. Even in Canada, where I live, Canada is the fourth largest producer of crude oil, remember it. But still, the prices at the petrol stations or gas stations, as we call it here, they are basically been controlled by the market forces. So because of the market scenario, prices have gone up here. So they are going up all around. And insurance is going up because shippers are reluctant to pass via the Strait of Hormuz. They are also reluctant to ship it now from Bab al-Mandeb. So that means they might have to take the another route through Suez Canal and the pipeline, the Sumed, and then through the coast of Africa. So that would all mean that the shipment prices, the insurance, and the shipment time would go up. And that would impact virtually all the importers, Pakistan included. And that also means that prices would go up. The problem with countries like Pakistan is that they don't have much strategic reserves. That is something that Pakistan should have done, but anyway, we did not do it, despite knowing the upheavals that oil markets often face. So with very little strategic reserves, we have to be prepared that in case the war goes on, and in case even if Bab al-Mandeb also gets to stand still, the impact could be much higher than what it is today.
There is another possible route, but it would require a major diversion. Oil could travel northwest from Yanbu through the Suez Canal, enter the Mediterranean, and then sail around the Cape of Good Hope to reach Asia. This would avoid both Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb, but the journey would be much longer. According to Kepler, a voyage from Yanbu to South Korea would increase from about 24 days to approximately 54 days. Some companies are already examining this option. The Rodos carrying Saudi crude to India turned north and indicated that it was heading towards the Suez Canal. South Korean refiner Hyundai Oil Bank has also sought a tanker capable of loading at Yanbu with the option of using the canal and Egypt-Sumed pipeline. The size of the tankers creates another challenge. Most Saudi crude leaving Yanbu is transported on very large crude carriers known as VLCCs. When fully loaded, these ships sit too deep in the water to cross the Suez Canal. Operators would have several options: unload part of the cargo into Egypt's Sumed pipeline, transfer oil between vessels through a process called lightering, or use smaller Suezmax tankers. All three would require changes to the existing transport system.
Yes. You see, to Asia, perhaps it won't be difficult because it's not going from the Arab world, especially the other thing. From this part of the world, basically two things go out: crude and petrochemicals. Now, that would definitely be impacted, yes. But what would really be happening is that this region, the Arab world, is dependent, even Iran would be dependent on many imports, especially food ingredients, rice, wheat, everything is imported in most of that part of the world, in the Arab world. Now, if both the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb remains closed, that could mean that the shipment of these items to the Arab world would be an issue, and that could mean that there could be a food shortage in that part of the world. There are already question marks about availability of potable water. Kuwait has already asked its citizens to be aware of it, reduce the consumption of water. Similarly, there could also be question marks about the availability of food and those sort of things in that part of the world. So it's a two-way traffic. If the world would be short of petroleum and crude, that part of the world could be short of all the things that they have been importing. So that this is a very difficult scenario that the world is in right now, and Mr. Trump started it.
Asian buyers could also look for crude from other producers. Russia already supplies large volumes to the region, although much of its western crude also travels through the Red Sea. Russian supply is facing additional pressure following Ukrainian attack on the country's refineries. Oil from the United States or Venezuela could become another option, although it would travel farther to reach Asian markets. There is also the question of compatibility. Refineries are designed to process particular grades of crude, which can limit how quickly they switch suppliers. Governments could release oil from strategic reserves, arrange emergency supplies, or introduce temporary measures to reduce demand. But those reserves are finite, and their impact would depend on the scale and duration of the disruption. The critical issue is no longer simply whether alternative oil and alternative routes exist, it is whether they can deliver the required volumes before delays begin to strain physical supplies.
At a point in time, Fateh Birol, my wonderful friend, the chief of the International Energy Agency, at a point in time said that the world, while this war was on, he said that the world is in for the largest crude shock or the oil shock, even bigger than the 1973 oil shock.
For now, some Saudi oil can still be rerouted, but the first tankers have already changed course, and every alternative adds more distance, time, and complexity. What happens next will determine whether this remains a disruption at sea or develops into a global oil shock.